Jai Hind, Namaste, hello, and a very warm welcome to UPSC for everyone. My name is Abhinav, and in this video, we'll be discussing selected topics from the Hindu and Indian Express for the date 15th of October. Now, in this video, we'll be discussing the following topics from the Hindu. Cabinet approval for school education reform project. This is called the STARS project. So, we'll see what this project is, and we'll also discuss about PISA. Then, loan borrowers. Deepavali is in your hands. Supreme Court tells Center. So, this is about the loan moratorium scheme. So, we'll see about that. Then the High Court notice to center on same-sex couple, please. So this is a notice by the Delhi High Court on petitions filed by same-sex couples. So we'll see what this petition is saying. Then wear masks or pay fine, says Railway. So in the light of the coming festive season, Railways has come out with new rules about traveling through the railways. Then J&K Ladakh women to benefit from rural scheme. Now this scheme is NRLM Ajivika. So we'll also discuss what that scheme is all about. Then Pakistan re-elected to human rights body. So a very big joke. Pakistan is elected to UNHRC. So we'll discuss this. Then storm may strengthen after crossing coast. So I will be telling you about the tropical cyclones because these cyclones are causing havoc in some parts of a country like Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, right? So we'll discuss that. Then from the Indian Express, Punjab not to 33% women quota in state civil services. So there is a new notification. We'll see that. After Galwan clash, ICRC approaches India and China. So ICRC is International Committee on Red Cross. So we'll discuss what this body does and why it approached India and China. Then intense frequent cold waves to sweep country this winter, says IMD. So what are the conditions that are going to lead to such problems? We'll see that. Then Russia approves second COVID-19 vaccine after preliminary trials. So Russia does it again. After Sputnik V, it has approved second COVID-19 vaccine. So we'll see what that vaccine is, on what platform is it based, and what stage of test has it passed. Then only one editorial and selected points. This editorial is from the Hindu, Labour's data lost. Now for the sake of your convenience, I will be providing timestamps in the description. So if you want to skip to a particular news, just click that timestamp and you will be taken to that particular article. And for getting PDF copy of this video, join our Telegram page. I will be providing the link of our Telegram channel as well, and you can join it and get the PDF for this video. So without further delays, let us get started. Storm may strengthen after crossing coast. So we have seen how heavy rains have caused havoc in Andhra Pradesh and some other states, right? So these are basically tropical cyclones. So first we'll see this news and then I will tell you something about tropical cyclone. It won't be possible to discuss that in detail. First, because we want to keep the video short. Secondly, there are many interrelated concepts. So I don't want to confuse you. So I'll just tell you in a brief that what is a tropical cyclone, right? Now first, let us see what this article is saying. This is from the Hindu. The subcyclonic system or deep depression that inundated Telangana and Andhra Pradesh is likely to peter out in a day, but will regain in strength again once it crosses Maharashtra coast on October 16. October and November are cyclone months with several storms originating in the Bay of Bengal. Most of that gain enough energy to become full-fledged cyclones, eventually dissipate once they make landfall in a day or so into what are called well-marked lows. However, it is rare for a storm that never became cyclone to manage a crossing across India's east and west coasts. Moisture from the sea imparts energy to tropical storms and can make them stronger. Only storms that whip up speeds greater than 62 km per hour are classified as cyclones. So please pay attention. According to IMD, in India, the storms that gather speed greater than 62 km per hour are classified as cyclones. So this is important for your PT as well. And the current disturbance is hovering over North Karnataka and Maharashtra with wind speeds of 30 to 40 kilometers per hour. So if they gain the speed, they will be classified as cyclones, right? As of now, we are calling them mini depressions or subcyclones. Cyclones Gaja 2018 and Varda 2016 were both storms that originated in the Bay of Bengal and crossed over all the way into Arabian Sea. Now first, look here. First we'll discuss what is tropical cyclone. So this is a tricellular model. Now this model postulates that there are three cells of global winds that are formed, and because of that other secondary winds are formed, right? This is the Hadley cell, this is the Ferrel cell, and this is the polar cell. And where these cells converge, they give rise to pressure belts, and from these pressure belts winds blow. For example, this region is of trade winds, this is of westerlies, and then this is of polar easterlies. Now what is a low pressure area? Now whenever any surface is heated, because of heat, the air there, it expands in size, right? When it expands in size, it rises up because its density decreases. It's a concept similar to a hot air balloon, right? What happens? You blow hot air into a balloon and the given air, it expands in size, and due to expansion in size, its density decreases and it starts floating in the air. That is the basic principle of any fluid floating over any other fluid. Fluid dynamics, if you know somewhat, right? Don't be confused, just a simple concept, right? These are the global winds. Now first, let me tell you what are the conditions for development of a tropical cyclone. Tropical cyclones originate and intensify over warm tropical oceans. The conditions favorable for formation and intensification of tropical cyclones are large surface area with temperature higher than 27 degrees, and that should happen for 3 to 4 months. So what really happens, that our summer starts from around April, peaks in May. So May, June, July, the oceans, they absorb heat. There is also a concept, that is basic science, that water gets heated slower than land, and then again it gets cooled slower than land because of its specific heat. Now specific heat is the amount of heat to raise the temperature of 1 gram of a body by 1 degree Celsius. The specific heat of water is greater than land, so water can absorb high amount of heat. So all these months, April, May, June, July, the water, it absorbs heat. Now because of this absorption of heat, the water starts releasing because it can hold only up to a certain amount of energy. Now when it starts releasing that energy, that leads to heating, intense heating of surface water, and because of heating of the surface water, the air in connection with that surface water, it also gets heated up and it rises. These are known as air currents. So any vertical movement of air is known as air current, and horizontal movement of air is known as wind. And if there is a circular movement, then we call them cyclones, right? Now what happens, that this air rises, and when it rises, it leaves behind a hollow, a vacuum. Now this vacuum is called a low pressure, and this low pressure attracts winds from nearby areas. Now when the winds come, they start rotating because of a phenomenon known as Coriolis effect. Now Coriolis effect basically says that the fluids, they deflect rightwards in the northern hemisphere and leftward in the southern hemisphere. Because of that, it creates a swirl, and that swirl is called a cyclone, right? Even if you don't understand it, give me some time. I will be making a video. I have plans of making so many videos. It's just that I'm the only person doing all of this, so it takes time, right? Now, the tropical cyclones are essentially known as heat engines. So the first condition is high temperature of 27 degrees and greater for a period of 3 to 4 months, right? Then presence of Coriolis force, because that is the force that gives the swirling or rotation to the winds. Small variation in vertical wind speed, that is the air currents, they should be stable. Pre-existing weak low pressure area or low lying cyclonic circulation, that happens because of the summer months. In March and April, there is condition of low level cyclonic circulation, and it gets intensified in October, November. That is why you see these cyclones, tropical cyclones, in October, November. And upper divergence above the sea level system, that is these winds, they rise above and then they diverge. This is called upper divergence, and there is a reason for that, but if I start explaining that, then that will become too technical for now. Till now we know temperature, Coriolis force, small variation, and pre-existing low pressure area. Now when this cyclone originates, it moves with the prevailing local winds, and in this region the prevailing winds are easterlies or the trade winds. So these winds, see, this is India, this is Bay of Bengal, this is Arabian Sea. So here the cyclone is developing. I'll just show you a diagram as well, map. So these winds come and they take these cyclones to the mainland. Now these tropical cyclones are essentially known as heat engines. So what happens, that till the time they get high energy from the water, they sustain, and when they hit the land, which is known as landfall, they dissipate. See, We read here that the full-fledged cyclones eventually dissipate once they make landfall in a day or so into what are known as well-marked lows. Now see, this is the world map. We are only interested in India here. So these are the prevailing winds. Here the low pressure system is developed, and these winds, they take them inwards, and those storms, they cause havoc. And basically this is how a tropical cyclone looks like. This is the low pressure center, winds coming from around, and because of Coriolis force, they start swirling. So the eye or the center is a calm area, and around that you have this swirling. See, this is how it looks like. So this is a brief about tropical cyclones. I will be making a extensive video about both tropical and temperate cyclones, so you'll get a better understanding about what they actually are. So for now, just keep in mind that the cyclones that are causing these problems, they are tropical cyclones, and they develop both in Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea, but they are more intense in Bay of Bengal because one more condition is there, that it should be shallow sea. So Bay of Bengal is shallow, and there are also deltas. So when these cyclones hit deltas, they cause large scale destruction. We'll discuss all of that when we discuss tropical cyclones, right? So for now, just keep these points in mind. Jammu and Kashmir, Ladakh women to benefit from rural scheme. So this is about the Ajivika, NRLM Ajivika or Deen Dayal Upadhyaya Ajivika scheme. Now, this scheme is about providing supplementary income to rural households, the poor rural households, and this basically focuses on women, and this is about providing them supplementary avenues to earn money through formation of self-help groups. Now, this scheme envisages that at least one woman per poor rural household should join a self-help group and should take some form of activity, because agriculture is not a year-round activity in many places of our country, right? So during the lean seasons and during the months when there is no activity, you need to supplement your income. So that is where the self-help groups come into play. Self-help groups are basically women coming together or people coming together. They pool in their resources, and then on a rotational basis, the people who want access to those resources, they get those resources. And government also pitches in by providing loans to these self-help groups. And the beauty of these self-help groups is that because women are the ones who take loans, so the NPAs are just about 2%. Now, this is a proven fact that whenever women take loans, then the probability of that loan turning into an NPA is extremely low. So that is why government promotes this scheme. So this scheme is not only about rural poverty, but it is also about women empowerment. So because of some technical errors, till now women in J&K and Ladakh, most of them were not eligible to benefit from the scheme. Now a new notification has come, and center has also earmarked around 520 crore rupees, especially for this region. So let's hope that this scheme brings new opportunities for women in J&K and Ladakh. So the Union Cabinet approved changes in the criteria to extend benefits under the Deen Dayal Antyodaya Rashtriya Ajivika Mission to over 10.5 lakh women in Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. Now, what is Ajivika scheme? It is essentially a poverty relief program of the central government and is aimed at providing livelihood to women in rural areas. It aims at creating effective and efficient institutional platforms to enable the rural poor to increase their household incomes by means of sustainable livelihood enhancements and better access to financial services. So that means loans. And what are sustainable livelihoods? For example, they go for animal husbandry. A minimum of one lady member of a rural household with particular emphasis on the marginal sections is to be brought in the network of an self-help group. An allocation of 520 crore has also been made for the next 5 years. Due to some technical reasons, very few women in J&K and Ladakh were eligible for the program. Now about the self-help groups under this Ajivika scheme, there are 63 lakh self-help groups comprising of 7 crore women members in the country, and they have been granted 3 lakh crore in loans, and the non-performing assets amount to only 2.3%. So see the beauty, when women take loans, the NPAs are extremely low. So this is about this scheme. So we got a brief introduction to the Ajivika scheme as well, and we got to know about the problem in J&K and Ladakh. Cabinet approves STARS project. Now this is very important, so we'll discuss this, right? And this article is in two parts. One is from the Hindu, so I will be discussing it here. Then the other part, that is from the Indian Express, we'll discuss that when I start the articles from Indian Express. Now let us see what this is saying. So STARS stands for Strengthening Teaching, Learning and Results for States, that is STARS project. Now this will be partially funded by World Bank to carry out reform agenda in 6 states, especially for early childhood and vocational education. Now focus would be on reforms in the following areas: governance of school education, improve data and assessment systems at national level, and improve teaching and learning outcomes. Now about the learning outcomes, the PISA survey, we will be discussing about that from the Indian Express, right? So the total cost would be around 5,700 crores, right? And the World Bank contribution would be around 3,700 crore. Now some of the components, very important component, emergency response component, that would help to deal with government response to disaster situations that lead to school closures and loss of learning. If you remember, we also discussed a report, World Bank's report, how there would be a cumulative loss of learning of half a year for students in South Asia, right? And that would lead to approximately $4,400 loss per student over their lifetime in their annual earnings. So this is going to be a very big dent in future. So to deal with such problems in future, they have come up with emergency response component. And the second one is PARAK, which would act as National Assessment Center. And this has been envisaged in the National Education Policy 2020. So what is PARAK? Performance Assessment Review and Analysis of Knowledge for Holistic Development. Now it will be assessing all the school boards in country. There are around 60 odd school boards in our country. And this PARAK system would be evaluating and assessing all those boards. About PARAK, included in the National Education Policy 2020, autonomous institution under the Ministry of Education. If you remember, it was earlier Ministry of Human Resource Development. Now the name changed to Education Ministry under the New Education Policy 2020. Will set norms for student assessment and evaluation for all school boards, 60 odd across the country, most of which currently follow norms set by state government. So this will also lead to some form of standardization. Now at the state level, this project seeks to improve education outcomes and school to work transition strategies for better labor market outcomes in Himachal Pradesh, Rajasthan, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Kerala and Odisha. So again, important points here are school to work transition strategies for better labor market outcomes. If you remember, there is also a component of vocational training in the new education policy. So this is going to supplement that. A similar project to be funded by Asian Development Bank will cover Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Uttarakhand, Jharkhand, Assam and every state will partner with one other state to share best practices. So this is the first part about the STARS program. The second part, that is PISA, how it will help in PISA, we'll discuss when we discuss the articles from Indian Express. High Court notice to center on same-sex couples, please. So there is a petition in the Delhi High Court and it says that the Special Marriage Act and the Foreign Marriage Act should apply to all the couples regardless of their gender identity and sexual orientation. And this plea has been filed by 2 separate petitions. The court has combined these 2 separate petitions into one. Now the petition, they argued that there are multiple judgments of the Supreme Court and Delhi High Court that said sexual orientation could not be grounds for discrimination. So in India, we have already decriminalized the homosexual relationships, right? The sexual behavior between homosexual couples. Now there is also a need to recognize their greater rights. And like all the citizens, they also have rights under Article 14, 19 and 21. So there should not be any discrimination against them. So they have just filed a petition. Now let us see, I'm sure if this gets into something big, then there would be a review in the Supreme Court and let us hope that there is a landmark judgment in this case as well. Now somewhat of funny news, Pakistan re-elected to human rights body UNHRC. Now I've been telling you time and again that UN has become a highly compromised institution. It is just like another bureaucracy full of corruption and vested agendas and greed for funding. So now countries like China, Pakistan and Russia, including Cuba, they are the members of UNHRC, the body that is meant to uphold human rights, right? And these are amongst the biggest violators of human rights. For example, China and what they are doing to the Tibetan people and the Uyghur Muslims, right? Pakistan, we all know, the country which has no concept of law or human rights or anything, and what they do to the Balochs, right? Russia, you cannot mess with the government in Russia. You can't even utter a word because if you do, you would get Novichok, and same is for Cuba, communist regime, right? So all of these countries are dangerous and they are part of the Human Rights Council. And if you pay attention, since the time Pakistan has become a member of Human Rights Commission, there have been many reports about this so-called Human Rights Commission or Council about Kashmir. So, like I always tell you, all these reports of international bodies, they are always motivated. There are big lobbies behind them. So please always take such reports with a bucket of salt, not a pinch of salt. And I always tell everybody, do not see yourself through the lens of other countries or more importantly, in our country, we face a problem. We see ourselves through the lens of white people. If there is an article in Washington Street Journal about how bad India is doing, then people will celebrate that. So this is a mentality. This is a colonial mentality and most of the people have not been able to get out of it. Now UN is nothing but it is a glorified bureaucracy and it is also full of corruption. So this is all about money. WHO has also been seriously compromised. It sent a team to China to probe into origin of Wuhan virus. And the team did not even visit the Wuhan place where the virus originated. So that is what they are doing. So it is important that one must understand that these bodies are a sham. Now these are the broad contours of human rights. You should have right to assembly, association, movement, freedom of religion, speech, press, information, thought, and education. None of these human rights are available in China, in Pakistan, and in Russia, right? But these are the members who are meant to uphold human rights in the UN body. Now, why do they want to become members of such bodies? They pay. Why do they want to? For example, China. Now, if China is member of Human Rights Council, there would not be any report which is anti-China or which paints China in a bad picture about its human rights abuse. If you remember, there was recently a report by Australia about 308 new concentration camps being run in Xinjiang, and those are acting like sweatshops where there is forced labor, and big corporations like Nike, they have gained from such things. So it is a very dirty circle, right? Pakistan can always push its agenda through this body. Now there will be more reports about alleged human rights violations in India, in J&K, and how India is not a secular country. Why? Because Pakistan is a member. So you have to understand all of these things, right? Now let us see. So Pakistan has been re-elected to the United Nations Human Rights Council despite opposition from activist groups over its abysmal human rights records. There was also a protest, human rights records. A coalition of human rights groups from Europe, US, Canada called on UN member states to oppose the election of China, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Cuba, Pakistan, and Uzbekistan, saying that the human rights records make them unqualified. Only Saudi Arabia did not make it, right? Russia and Cuba, running unopposed, also won the seats. So for the next 3-4 years, whenever you see any reports from this Human Rights Commission regarding India, please take it with a bucket of salt. Not a pinch of salt, but bucket of salt, because two of our biggest adversaries, China and Pakistan, are members of this council. Wear masks or pay fine, say railways. So the festive season is coming and there would be large movement of people. So to facilitate that, railways has also started around 325 special trains. Now what is the problem? As we know, in our country, the places are very crowded, especially the railway stations, and especially during this festive seasons. Now the corona pandemic is not yet under control. There is no vaccine as of now, right? But people are not following the precautions. Many are not wearing masks and they are not also following social distancing norms. And that is not only the case in our country, even in other countries, even countries like Spain, where they suffered heavy casualties, there have been protests again, lockdowns and COVID restrictions. So it is just about human nature and human psychology. So railways has now come up with a new thing that if you're traveling in the railways and you're not wearing a mask and if you're not following social distancing norms, you could be fined and you could even be sent to prison. So passenger traveling on train without mask, not following social distancing, or on railway premises now need to pay fines or even face jail terms as per new guidelines. This is to seek to protect the spread of COVID-19 during the upcoming festive season. And the punishments would be given under Railway Act section 145, 153, 154 of Railway Act 1989. So a good measure by railways, but let us see what the implementation is going to be like. Loan borrowers, Deepavali is in your hands, Supreme Court tells Center. So we have already discussed this loan moratorium where Center promised that it will take the burden of giving moratorium on the compound interest, that is interest on all those people who took the option of moratorium and did not pay their EMIs during this period of 6-month moratorium that was provided, right? Now we have discussed how the center gave the plea that it would be a substantial cost, but it also asked the court not to entertain any further pleas. Now court said okay, but now the center is waiting till November 15 to notify the compound interest waiver. So Supreme Court is asking, why are you waiting for so long? Please give out the notification so that these people can have a worry-free Diwali. So the Supreme Court questions the need to wait till November 15 to notify compound interest waiver scheme for waiving compound interest accumulated during the moratorium against loans worth up to 2 crore. We have discussed this, that is why I am not getting into it. And the waiver scheme has been proposed for 8 different categories, including MSME, education, housing, consumer durables, credit cards, auto, personal and consumption loans. So these are all the categories, and we have discussed what the RBI said, what the center said, and finally center accepted it. But now center is saying that court, please do not entertain any new petitions regarding this case. We are ready to pay, but we cannot take any more burden about this. Labor's data lost about informal workers. So this editorial is from the Hindu. So many opinionated things, so I have left them out. I'm only going to discuss some factual things that have been mentioned in the editorial, right? And fortunately for today, there was just one editorial for me to discuss with you. There is one more editorial. I will be providing that in the PDFs, but then again, it is highly opinionated and they have just fudged the figure. So I don't want to get into it. And rest in Indian Express and the Hindu, not any good editorials. You know, if there is a good editorial which is factual, I'll always discuss that with you, right? Now, the Indian workforce has consistently depended on the so-called casual labor for decades. As per the 2017 economic survey, about 14 crore migrant workers are there, half of whom are interstate workers. Informal workers, please pay attention, contribute nearly 50% to the GDP, and interstate migrant workers contribute to about 6% of the GDP. And if you remember, interstate migrant workers have also been covered under the new labor codes. Anybody with income up to rupees 18,000 per month is recognized as a worker under the labor codes, right? And they also pay attention to interstate migrant workers and also the platform and gig workers. We have discussed all of that in earlier videos. A majority of interstate laborers are self-employed and or are engaged in casual labor with limited opportunities for skill building and increased wages. So self-employed means someone is a vegetable vendor, someone is a street hawker. So these people are interstate laborers. So such people, they don't have any opportunities for skill building. What skill would a vegetable vendor would be able to generate from his own work, right? So this is the problem. Despite the threat of automation and mechanization, the Labour Ministry has sought to focus its skill development initiatives primarily on the formal sector. So he says, this person who has written this editorial, that the Labour Ministry is ignoring the informal sector, right? And there is some merit in that. But then again, it would be a vicious circle. You train the informal sector people and then they enter the formal sector. But as per this person, there is a threat due to automation and mechanization. So those people who would want to enter the formal sector, they would still be jobless because their jobs would be taken up by machines and automation, right? So sometimes, you know, these people, they just write for the sake of writing and they beat their own points. Now getting back to it, he says there's an urgent need to better assess the capabilities and improve skills of the informal sector as well. A better solution could have been that these people who are working in informal sectors, you train them for some skill development, or you give them some entrepreneurial training and give them access to loans, right? For example, government has given rupees 10,000 loan for street hawkers, right? And street vendors. Then again, this person, according to this person, I am not agreeing with it because in India, there is still much way to go till we adopt automation and mechanization, right? But then again, these people have to write anything. The unacceptably high levels of informal employment have negative impacts, not just on workers, but also on the country. How? First, the informal sector does not provide learning and training opportunities and invests little on their workers, hindering their chances to upgrade. Now, this point is correct, right? Like I said, that there is no chance for a vegetable vendor to gain something, right? In terms of training. Second, it compounds the existing inequality in the country. It presents itself as a source of income for poor families whose children often drop out from education to help support their families. In doing so, they halt their own development in formal education or training, leading to sustained low wages. Now, this is also true to a very large extent. Historically, marginalized communities such as Dalits, Muslims, and Adivasis are disproportionately affected by this. This is also true. And finally, because these people are not able to take care of their health, and more so they are vulnerable to attacks in the present scenario, so a healthy workforce is necessary and sufficient condition for healthy country. From an economic standpoint, a healthy workforce implies higher levels of productivity, and it is an end in itself from a constitutional standpoint. So these are only the relevant points that I could find from that editorial. That is why I'm just discussing these ones. Now some articles from the Indian Express. So this one is from page 8. Cabinet Note for World Bank aided STARS Project National Assessment Center. So we have already discussed the first part, STARS project, and the National Assessment, PARAK, right? Now the other part is PISA. So India's participation in 2022 cycle of PISA, the program for International Student Assessment Survey, will also be funded in this project. Now PISA basically tests the learning levels of students in various classes in basic reading and numerical skills, the numeracy skills. For example, they check if students in class 8 can perform the basic numerical problems of mathematics, right? So there have been very damning reports about India's education system. For example, they found out that students in 7th class, they could not do the basic numerical problems that students of class 2 should be able to do. Same went for reading as well. So let us see what is PISA. PISA, introduced in 2000 by OECD, tests the learning levels of 15-year-old children in reading, mathematics and science. The test is conducted every 3 years. India stayed away from PISA in 2012 and 15 on account of its dismal performance in 2009, when it was placed 72nd among 74 participant countries. The government decided to end the boycott in 2019. So 2019 it ended. So the next cycle starts from 2022. So that participation funding would also come under the STAR program. Now again from page 8, Punjab nod to 33% women quota in state civil services. Good news that 33% reservation for women in direct recruitment for Punjab civil services boards and corporations. So this is known as Punjab Civil Services Reservation of Posts for Women Rules 2020 to provide such reservation for women for direct recruitment to posts in government as well as in board and corporations in group A, B, C and D posts. So all those who are preparing for various government exams, they should pay specific attention to this. The state had provided 33% reservation for women in panchayats and local bodies. So that is under the 73rd and 74th Amendment Acts, right? So a good initiative by Punjab government. After Galwan clash, ICRC approaches India-China. So ICRC is International Committee for Red Cross, approached both Indian and Chinese governments and asked that they observe Geneva Conventions to which both countries are signatories. So Geneva Conventions are rules that you have to follow to engage with the international community. ICRC approached the permanent mission of India in Geneva and handed over a note verbale, a form of diplomatic communication, bringing attention to the rules under the Geneva Convention in situations of armed conflict. ICRC made an identical outreach to permanent mission of China as well. Now about these conventions, like all other members of the international community, both India and China have acceded to 1949 Geneva Conventions, a set of 4 international treaties. So initially there were 4 and then later on 3 more were added that ensure that in a conflict, warring parties conduct themselves in humane ways with non-combatants such as civilians and medical personnel, as well as with combatants no longer actively engaged in fighting such as prisoners of war and wounded or sick soldiers. 3 protocols were added in later years. India has signed off on one of the protocols and China on 2. The ICRC is an international humanitarian organization and has the mandate to monitor the signatories follow the rules in situations of conflict. So International Committee for Red Cross. Now, for example, you get a question on this for prelims that what it does. Now you might confuse it with Red Cross and you might take on the medical aid, but no, it is about ensuring that countries, they follow the Geneva protocols of international relations. Then another news related to geography and meteorology. Intense frequent cold wave to sweep country this winter, says IMD. So this is about La Nina. then again I won't be able to discuss the concepts because they are very big concepts. See, meteorology is about building concepts in geography. Until and unless you don't know the basic concepts like high pressure, low pressure, wind and air current, air mass, front, I won't be able to explain these things. So please forgive me for now. Give me some time. I will be making good videos for you and I will try to induce some animation so that they become clear to you. So till then, let us just read it, right? So this year's winter is likely to be colder with intense and more frequent cold wave events likely to sweep over India. Now, important point is whenever there are La Nina conditions, that is associated with intense cold wave conditions in India. So since August, a weak La Nina condition has prevailed over the Pacific Ocean. During La Nina years, the severity of cold conditions becomes intense. The frequency of area covered under the grip of cold wave become larger. So just you keep in mind for now that this year we'll have more cold waves, right? Because of La Nina. Then another news from Russia, you really have to give it to Mr. Putin. Russia approves second COVID-19 vaccine after preliminary trials. So their first one was Sputnik V or Sputnik 5. Now they have come up with another one. And like the first one, it has also only been through the phase 2 of trials, not phase 3. So let us see. So Russia has granted regulatory approval to a second COVID-19 vaccine according to its register. The jab was developed by Vector Institute in Siberia and completed early stage human trials this month. However, results have not been published. But if you remember, I also told you that a Lancet report has published the stage 2 report of the Sputnik 5 and it says that it is safe, but we have to wait for stage 3 trials. Now, this is a peptide based vaccine. If you remember, I've told you that the Sputnik V and the one developed by AstraZeneca and some other vaccines, they are adenovirus based, but this is peptide based vaccine. So this is only thing that you need to know, that this one is peptide based and it is named Epivac Corona. Is the second to be licensed for use in Russia. There has been a placebo controlled trial on 100 volunteers between 18 and 60 in Novosibirsk. So I have explained this whole trial phenomena earlier. So please, I can't get it into again and again. So a shot developed by Moscow's Gamaleya Institute, Sputnik V, was licensed for domestic use in August. The vaccine based on adenovirus was also registered before phase 3 trial. So some of the people in Russia are also taking the Sputnik V. So let us see what are the long-term consequences, and I hope that that vaccine is safe so that it could be used for mass distribution. So folks, that is all for this video. Thank you for watching. If you like our videos, please subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so that you don't miss out on any new videos that we post. Also, if you like our video, please give us a thumbs up. And please do connect with us on our Instagram page, UPSC for Everyone. So see you next time. Till then, stay happy, stay safe and have a great day. Namaste and Jai Hind.